Oh,
Hi.
yeah, there we go.
So today, what's the date?
April 7th.
April 7th. So today we are going to taste Rogue Silvestre, the 75%. This is the cacao from Bolivia. It grows along the Rio Beni, so the river named Beni in Bolivia. And it's wild in that it's not been domesticated. It really just grows wild along the riverbanks and along little islands. And the people who collect it are kind of loosely referred to as cacao hunters. So people who are collecting the bounty of nature and who are locally on site as they collect the cacao. As you know, cacao is fermented. So it's being cut open, they're scooping out the beans and the pulp inside, putting them into literally, this is what Colin Gasco of Rogue Chocolatier was telling me and explaining, they're doing a wild ferment on site. So all fermentation is actually spontaneous in cacao. Most chocolate makers buy cacao that's been spontaneously fermented, where there has not been any inoculation of the piles. It's just a natural fermentation. But in this case, it's even more interesting in that they're throwing the pulp and the pulp surrounding the beans or the seeds into a bag and hanging it from a tree for 3 days and letting it ferment. So it doesn't really get any more natural than that.
Okay.
So these are fermented for 3 days and then dried, and then Colin Gasco hunted down these beans and got them and brought them in and is making this fantastic limited edition bar that we're going to taste today.
That's great. I have a question.
Yes.
How much of the cacao in the world is domesticated versus wild? Is it really rare to find like wild cacao?
Very, very rare. Very, very rare.
Okay.
Yeah. There are, and it's not clear. I've seen some trees where they talk about it being wild, and they are very different looking trees. The thing is that sometimes you find sort of isolated pockets of cacao that is growing. Is it truly wild, or is it just that this grove has been untended to for some time, but was originally planted and being sort of farmed and is no longer for whatever reasons?
Yeah.
So it's very, very rare. I would say, like, I'm going to throw out a number, like definitely less than 1% of the world's cacao, maybe like 0.1%
Oh
or
wow,
something.
wow! And you said the pods for these are really small compared to like regular cocoa pods.
Right,
from
the
other
regular
trees.
pods are almost like football sized, and these ones are, they vary in size, but they're usually more like lemon size, so they're very small. And the beans are very small too.
So it's not that they have less beans; it's just everything is like shrunk inside.
There's probably fewer beans as well,
Yes,
because they're so tiny.
Okay.
I should have brought I have some of those beans. I'll have to put some images up of those.
I'm imagining, and I don't know if that's like maybe we need to have a picture of where this is, but I'm imagining like there's the river and there's someone who's like boating, and then there would be like the cocoa trees on the sides of the river with like these burlap bags hanging with cocoa beans fermenting.
Yes.
That would sound right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, basically they leave them there to ferment and then come back and
like
get
pick them up while on their boats, put them on their boats.
Yeah. They probably have to get out of their boats.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But wow, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
I have
pretty
this
wild.
like picture in mind, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think that it's always interesting, I think, to, take a food product and think about, before it came into this shape in this bar, where has it been? And thinking of it starting along this riverbank, and Colin was sort of describing the process, like, sometimes it's it's traveling by boat, and then maybe sometimes it's traveling by like mule, boat, train, car, and then ship, and so it's kind of interesting to see it'd be interesting to sort of build out the story behind, everything that happened before we got it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's really interesting. It's part of what helps us understand why the flavors are so lovely and unique.
Yeah.
So just a quick mention that if you look at the ingredients, it's cocoa beans, cane sugar, so 2 ingredients. This is keeping it really simple, no added vanilla, no added cocoa butter. The cocoa butter is just what's intrinsic to the bean. So a really pure chocolate. So we are going to taste that right now. There you go. It's a little bit scuffed because it's been sitting with other pieces.
So I had tasted batch 3 before, and I remember when I took it out of the packaging, it was like a mirror. It was so shiny, I could see my reflection.
Yeah, Colin definitely, I think there's so many places in chocolate making where we don't realize the kind of effort and care and experience and skill that's required. And certainly when you're dealing with just cocoa beans and sugar and these kinds of beans that are so complex to work with, even tempering is so hard.
Yeah, I've tried it by hand and with a machine, and I know it's really hard. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. It smells really nice.
So different makers, I'm going to let you taste that, but I'm just going to mention that one of the things that Rogue Chocolatier likes to do is talk about the kind of flavor notes that he gets from these beans. And I know that he was saying that these beans, an interesting thing about these beans is that each one is so different. When he would break open the beans after roasting them, some of them would be really like citronella or orange or banana, you know, and each one is so different. And so the flavor notes he writes, I won't tell you the flavor notes actually, you probably know them already, but I'll let you just tell me what you're tasting.
It was a big piece, so
Took a while.
it has to wait. I can't really bite on it because I have to like, you have to take it all over your palate and in all the corners. And it's nice because every coat wraps. I mean, every time you eat it, and then it starts wrapping your mouth with the coating is chocolate, and then yeah, you have layers. It's delicious. I know it's funny, like the first thing that comes to my mind is toast. Something that's toasted. I guess like bready, nutty, little buttery, and it's like really smooth. The batch before, the batch 3, that I had tasted was really strong in plums. And this one also has this plummy, or it's like when it reminds me, because I eat a lot of prunes, so it's just like this like flesh, sweet flesh, but also tangy, but that has a little more consistent, juicier. That's why I thought plums was really appropriate, and that's one of the notes he had on the packaging. This one I thought was not as strong in the plum flavor, but had different, like another side to it that was more on the toast side, like nutty, toasty, buttery. It's very lovely. It's really nice. And it finishes, to me it finishes very high, like these plum notes start adding to the end, so it's not something that's dying off. It's like building up to the end, and you keep, you know, saying you know, having all these noises come off your throat just because it's so delicious.
So the plum notes are specifically towards the end then?
Yeah.
They're sort of because in chocolate, when you're tasting the chocolate, there's certainly like the initial notes, and then there's stuff that happens in the middle, and then the end, and then the taste that you have that stays in your mouth, so.
Yeah, I guess it's, when I smelled it, it like smelled like a butter toast, and then tasting it, you know, that was the initial, and then the plum notes started adding up. Yeah, it's very lovely, and it's very smooth. It melts really nicely, and the finish is delicious. Also, you know, it stays in your mouth for a while. There are some chocolates I've tasted that you just want to drink some water afterwards because it doesn't taste that good. But this one is pretty delicious. Nice. You don't want to eat anything for like, or more for like 15 minutes afterwards.
Right.
It's very good.
Awesome. So
You want to read what he has?
Oh, the flavor notes? Sure, we'll end with that. So he refers to plum and jasmine and banana as flavor notes for this particular bar. I know that I've tasted this bar many times in different batches, and there's one time that I tasted a piece of the Silvestre, and I had this like very brief, like just explosion of floral jasmine in my mouth. It was unbelievable. I've only had that happen once, and because these beans sort of each have their own flavors, I wonder if that's part of it, is that, I mean, it doesn't really make sense that I would get one bite that had jasmine in it because it's so well mixed, and you know, it shouldn't be
but maybe your
conched,
your palate was clean at that point, and it was when you caught this, because if you taste it in the morning versus afternoon versus evening, you could catch various flavors. And I guess our palates are good, but maybe not as educated as Colin, who like is exposed to this every day.
Right.
Probably practices a lot. And,
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, it's delicious.
All right.
Thumbs up.